So we will call the Regional Agreement Committee meeting of April 24th, 2023 to order at 5:02. And this meeting is being recorded on WHCA. We do have Chris Scriven, one of our voting members, on the phone. I don't think we have to take too many votes, if any. But if we do, we'll have to do them via roll call. Well, I say that, and then I see meeting minutes as the second item. So we might have to do a little bit here. I don't see anyone here for public comment. Public comment? Jen, you don't want to do public comment?
Standing roll.
Okay, so no public comment tonight. So, Chris, if you can still hear us okay, or is it okay to try and vote the meeting minutes, or do you want to wait until maybe you get here? What's easier?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't put the pledge. So, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance first. So hang on, Chris. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So I would entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of April 10th, 2023.
So moved.
Chris, you mind seconding that?
Check.
Any discussion?
I don't vote that there's a typo.
Is there a typo?
Yeah,
Okay.
just in one of the many times that Mr. Evans is referred to, under leases, the N is missing. So under leases on page 2, Mr. Evans reported 5 votes support.
So we can clean that up. I don't think we need to vote for that. It's just a typo. But thank you for pointing that out. So we'll make that adjustment. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Chris?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Okay. So next item we had was the consensus document. So I attempted to update this based upon our conversation last time. So I just left it in red line and I sent it in Word so you all have a copy as well. So basically added some language about checking with legal counsel on the 2/3 vote, change assessment methodology or utilization of funds, exceeding the minimum local contribution. I don't know if you've got any feedback on that yet. That's fine. We talked about, I just put some notes in here. So, basically, again, as this is a living document, we're trying to have a record of what we talked about. So everyone kind of said there is consensus support on number 2, same with number 3, same with number 4. And I did, in number 4 at the top of the page, when we talked about the emergency language, we talked about including at a minimum the town administrator. So we just inserted that. That was the only change there. And then Justin, I think we were going to try and clarify the whole conversation we had around approval or not. I don't know if you have had a chance to do that, or you may not have yet.
Did. Somewhere in the 5th hour of our meeting last Tuesday. Find those notes.
The 5th hour.
Joey, the school committee might have, isn't it? Yeah.
It's long.
I can actually go back to the 2/3 first. So
Sure.
Circling back. We did discuss that, and actually the 4 members that were present all were okay with the change to 2/3 vote for changing methodology.
Okay.
So
Good feedback there.
consensus agreement that we agree with all the other
Good.
groups.
Thank you for that.
And on the emergency language, Mary Beth, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe we were all, there's a little bit of discussion on it, but we're all okay with specifying the town administrator or designee or something. Because I think the intent would be that Mary Beth would probably call our facilities director, run the changes by them. I think the verbal okay, but I think we're okay with notifying the town administrator and keeping the language there as is.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you. So I'll make an update. I'll change, Justin was going to clarify additional approval to, we have consensus support for that one, and we have consensus support for the, well, I'll leave the 2/3 one alone, because we still need legal counsel. And then for number 5, consensus support. Number 6, I just added the language that we had talked about, that there was consensus support for the transportation section. However, at some point in time, when there was a determination of the financial methodology, that should probably go in here as well. So we're all clear on what it is. That's more of a placeholder. And So you all have that document. That should, again, hopefully be a living document that we can keep updated as we move forward. Anything on that? Everyone's okay? Good? Yes. So then the other item we were going to do tonight, we all had some homework, which was to read the amended agreement draft, because we never formally approved it in either town, and kind of go through that. And I think what we were going to try and do is really just spend some time tonight walking through the document and talking about sections that may or may not need to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. I know as I was doing that, there was clearly some sections that the document that we just looked at has language that we just need to replace in this document, so we can kind of cover that as we go. But other than that, I was thinking we could just kind of, again, go as long as people want or as we can, and kind of talk through the 2018 draft amended agreement. Again, we can make comments as we go. And again, bring that back. Similarly, if there's anything major that comes out of it. Again, I think the hope is the major stuff was in that consensus document, so this should hopefully be mostly light lifting. So if everyone's good with that, we'll kind of just roll through it. I think the header section is fine. Yes, anything on the header section before section 1? Section 1, I had a note here already from all of us that we had talked about maybe including a definition section here. So specifically defining in section 1 some definitions like the school committee shall mean, the board of selectmen or select board, or however the heck we want to word it, shall mean. So I just put a little note that we should probably have some definitions for anything else that we want to do here. So does that sound okay? I don't know what those exactly would look like other than school committee and select boards, but those were the notes I had from previous conversations. Did anyone have anything else in section 1, which is paragraph? Oh, you didn't? You need a second?
I think section 1 is fine.
Yeah, it's literally the first right there. I may have another copy. A lot of stuff in this one.
I think I got it.
You got it? Okay, section 2, powers, duties, composition, anything in that first section which consists of A, B, or C. I guess the only thing I highlighted, so section C there, the last sentence of it, we're at the top of page 2. The last kind of half sentence of section C says, so this basically talks about if the census changes and we need to shift the number of members on the school committee. So the language as presently stated says the committee will act to address the disparity by either adjusting the number of committee members or weighing the votes. So as I read that, I really didn't like that language, because to me it's really, so what would have happened in this situation, right, is we conducted some sort of census and now we need to shift. So we need to go from 6-4 to 5-5, 7-3, or whatever. So the language just says the committee will act to address it. Just, I don't, like, I could just see that being a little bit of a mess. Like, what does that mean? The committee can address it like in 3 years. The committee has to address it next year. The committee can address it by firing someone. Like, what does that mean? So I just thought maybe we should talk that through a little bit to have some more potential specificity to. I don't just leave it up to the school committee. Like, what? Technically, it's a binding agreement between the towns.
Because we'll find out on October 1st. I mean, we'll know by eye test in September if something changed, if we had an influx of people moving from Hanson, or move from Hanson to Halifax, and everybody from Abington moved to Whitman. Or flip it, you know what I mean? We would know over the summer but your official numbers wouldn't.
Well,
come
so,
up till
well, no,
October.
so this is, I think, right, this isn't student, this is town.
Oh, top of your top.
So this is, yeah, no, good, so, and this is what I'm talking about. So I think this is like in the 5-year decennial census. Somebody's gonna pull the numbers and be like, there's now, whatever, 30,000 people in Whitman and 10 in Hanson.
Right.
So it needs to
Yeah, I
be like 76, 20, like, so again, like,
I understand.
I feel like this is one of those where maybe when we talked about it last time, and I was part of that too, we just kind of like punted because it was like, oh, this is messy, I'm not sure we want to deal with it. But I kind of think we should talk about it a little bit. Like even if it's just language that says based upon that, you know, the following election, like
Yeah, even-
that would be the way to catch it, right? The following election, whenever that happens,
Will
the
be
following
addressed in the
election.
election, not like mid-year decide suddenly Hanson votes are worse.
Yes,
Yeah.
right before budget, right? Like not, like just no, like so. Maybe we could put some language in there that says, yeah, maybe there's some language that we could add in there, or and I could, again, we could make a note, and even, now we're getting close to legal, just kind of the sentiment of whether it's Mars or an attorney, just, hey, can you add some language that specifies like how this would go? Like, you know, we get the report, the towns are notified, and then at the next election, you know, so for example, you know, if it was shifting from town A to B, and town A was getting one more and town B was losing one, then whoever's seat is up, and town B goes away, and town A now gets another seat in the next election. Boom, done. It's just a clean way of doing it, opposed to the committee will act.
Yes.
Very good. So, everyone okay with something like that? I'll just make a
Yes.
note in here and send it. Need something specific on timing, census, and that this address next elections. Okay. That should give us enough of a comment that. And one second, let me just see this. Okay.
Chris, just to
Yeah.
offer up, there's language in the Dyker-Hovick agreement that addresses, I'll just read it to you. If it considers, so this situation, changes are required in order to ensure, as far as practicable, that the number of votes from each town remains in approximate proportion to the respective population. The committee shall prepare an amendment to this agreement for that purpose. So there's language in the Dyker-Hovick that also addresses if population shifts, some action can be taken.
So,
But I like what you've come up with.
yeah, because my concern with that one is now we just, so basically we moved to weighted votes. So we didn't address the disparity of the committee members, we moved to the weighted vote system, and now we're gonna have this funky, like, again, let's just say town A has 7 members and town B has 3, and I'm being purposely vague, so we don't have to
Yes.
ruffle any feathers in either town. Right now, all of a sudden it shifts to 6-4, so what, like now we're sitting in a meeting and it's like, hey, the 7 of you now count for 6, so you all have 1/6 of a vote amongst us. Like, just picture trying to do voting, like, to me, it would be a mess. And like, when does that happen?
Right, no, I like
Right?
that.
So, yeah, okay, so we can come up with, like, I think if it's just, if we're saying, you know, Whitman's had 6 and Hanson's had 4, and the census causes it to change, then it is what it is.
Be addressed in the next election.
Yeah, you just address it next election.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, moving on. So Lisa, we're just going through the 2018 agreement, kind of section by section we're on. We've made it to page, top of page 2. Section B is about vacancies. Anyone have anything there? Good. Section C is organization. Anyone have anything there? The only thing I had, a couple highlights, and I didn't look at the 91 agreement. I meant to and I forgot. But So it talks about at the first regular meeting of the committee following the town election, so that would be our reorganization meeting, the committee shall organize and choose by ballot.
Yeah.
So we don't do that. And I'm not sure a ballot is necessary. So again, this might be an opportunity to just say committee shall organize and choose by roll call voting or something to that effect. Are you looking for the 91?
I am.
Well, all right, yeah.
Could you just put a vote, say by vote?
Yeah.
Yes,
Give
vote
you
would
enough-
also vote the chairperson.
Enough leeway that's either.
If we wanted to go to ballot, we could. I don't like having language that is not representative of what we're doing today.
Right.
I don't think it should say ballot if we have no intention of using
Right.
ballot. So
Yep.
that's we could just change it to vote. Here's one. You have it. The other, so I'm going to put will here as actual comments. Change to. Then a little further down, it says, the members of the committee choose such other officers as it deems advisable, determine the terms of the office of its officers, except the chairperson who shall be elected annually as provided above. So the challenge I had with that section was, I'm not sure it would make sense to ever have a vice chairperson that would have a 3-year term. Like, we reorganize every year. So I guess my suggestion here was, rather than say, determine the terms of its officers, except the chairperson should be elected annually as provided above, I was thinking it should just say, determine the term of its office, of its officers, who shall be elected annually, period, the end. So that way, if you're going to reorganize, just do it that way. Everyone's okay with that?
The previous agreement says by ballot, so.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So, I mean, technically, I guess you could try and argue maybe it's a ballot, but it's not. It's not a write-in ballot. So, okay. So let's just leave it as this should be annual for every officer. And then the last part, which I think is understood, we've talked about this, but just so you all understand it, again, this is a chance to talk about it and make sure, is the last section does give the chairperson the authority to appoint members to serve on subcommittees. So basically, for school committee purposes, the chairperson has a lengthy list of authorizations, which is basically, not really, you set the agenda and you appoint subcommittee members. That are your sole, that's about it. But again, I just wanted to make sure that that makes sense to everyone. I can't really see another way. Remember the school committee select the chairperson, so I think there's a control built in, so if the chairperson's like, I know you really want to be on that subcommittee, but you're never going to be on it, and then at some point it's probably going to catch up and they're not going to be the chairperson anymore. So I think there is a control there, but and the way we've handled it up to that point is we've done a lot of consensus the last couple of years. I think it's actually worked well, where it's kind of like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And everyone's kind of been where they want to be. So again, just wanted to kind of bring that up for discussion. Is that how you guys do it? I'm pretty sure that's how the select boards do it, both women selectmen. And is that how you do it? Chairperson appoints subcommittee members?
Yeah. That's how it's done.
Okay, so these were consistent. All right, moving on. Section 3.
We have to change.
A. What do you want to change?
So it says pupils in 9 through 10, or 12 attend regional high school, and pre-K through 8 attend the schools located in their town of residence. That shifted when all pre-K was in Miquon, so that should have been updated, and now all pre-K is here. So we just have to change the language. Preschool and 9 through 12 are located in regional high school, and K to 8 go to their school of the town in which they live in.
So, except on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and by the vote of the committee. So we do have language to protect a change in the futures. Okay, so.
But right now, we're not.
Okay, yeah, no, I hear you. I hear
But
you.
I think you should also look at the last sentence, because there are times when, due to issues, students in the school, that the superintendent allows,
Yeah, we keep that in there.
but it doesn't go to the school committee.
What about like special education? because I highlighted that last sentence
Right.
too. Like, we have students that live in
Every-
one town
right.
or the other
Sure,
town that may go
sure.
to a special education in the other town.
Right.
And I agree, like, that shouldn't have to come to this.
Right. I mean, I think the placement of district programs is one thing, but there are also 3, 4, 5, 6 students throughout the years that something didn't happen in, you know, whatever. In Whitman, it didn't work out well, so we said, give a shot, Hanson, and vice versa. That doesn't come to school committee. That's an educational decision that shouldn't, in my mind, shouldn't need a vote of the committee. It should just be
Yeah.
superintendent. You know what I mean? So like, trying to help kids.
The highlighted piece is, first of all, clearing up the pre-K piece. That's there.
Absolutely.
And then the other piece, I think, we could include a line around regional program. District programs are located throughout the district, and students are assigned to those programs based on need.
Right, based on need or something like that, right?
So first part of paragraph needs to state PK,
That was the opening, that was already closed.
PK comma 9 through 12.
Correct.
And but see, does anyone disagree that if we were changing PK or 9th grade to a different school, or 5th grade to a different school, that should come to the school committee? So for example, right, we put PK in the high school. Now let's fast forward 20 years. Say we want to put PK at school Y. Like, do we want that in the agreement etched in stone? Probably not, right, because we already changed it. And I don't think we want to have a regional agreement committee to just say we're moving students because now we have space or a new building or whatever happened, right? So we definitely want some authority here, but would you think that, see, I'm thinking that would come to the school because that would be such a rare,
No, and maybe I'm reading this differently. I'm reading this like maybe as a principle that says that student X.
no, so I think we need both.
Right.
So I'm saying let's cut this in half.
Programmatic.
So first half is,
Right.
here's where all the kids go today.
Correct.
PK
Right.
and 9 through 12 are in the high school, and K through 8 go through the other schools. That's
Yeah.
where it is today. And if we want to change that, then how do we change that becomes the question. We can have the superintendent make that determination. We can have the school committee make that determination, or we can say it's in the agreement, tough luck, we got to go renegotiate the whole agreement. I don't like that last one, because that's going to take a long time. And I think it's, so it really, to me, boils down to superintendent or school. I lean towards school committee because those should be rare type of situations that we should all be talking about and people should understand. Like all of a sudden we're saying, you know, whatever, we're going to have a new, again, 20 years from now, right? 30 years from now, 50, we're going to have a new joint middle school. Like, I don't think Jeff should just be able to wake up one morning and go, hey, this is what we're doing, right? Like,
No, I
whoever, the superintendent. So that's kind of where I was going, George. Does that make sense? So like that, is everyone okay with that? Would be a school committee decision? We can put it in the regional agreement, but again, like, I don't know if we want to really do that.
And then how general would you go with it?
I don't think it's programmatic.
So I think we go, need to update for a
Something
second.
just said
Programmatic
the grade level. as
If we're moving
opposed to
that
the
grade, right, exactly. A grade would be the discretion of the school, would require a school.
Correct.
Yes. An individual student would be up to the
Yeah, so
discretion
you
of the
could say if
superintendent.
there are grade level shifts within the district, based on circumstances, it needs to have a vote of the school committee.
Right.
Right, from what's in here today.
If not for new Whitman Middle School, if that building was just built and it had space, school committee, we would have asked the school committee to move grade 5 and 2. Because it's a new building, you had to do that.
Right.
But here lies that shift. If we had lower enrollment and space at Whitman Middle, and we wanted to programmatically move that 5th grade, it should be approved by the school committee.
Not to get off kind of a weird tangent, but if there were a hypothetical, needed to make room at Indian Head, so the Hampton students that live north of wherever on 58 go to Duval,
Yes.
ship PK, how would that be handled under this?
Good point.
Well, I think so maybe we can have language that says if, based upon the needs of an individual student, the superintendent shall have discretion to make the adjustment, because that wouldn't be an individual student,
No.
that would be a whole, right? Like that would be a grade or.
Whole neighborhoods.
Right.
Like almost like a redistricting.
Yeah.
Except within 2 towns.
there is a,
I'm gonna be there for that.
so I
But
think
if you use
maybe,
the words programmatic, though,
Programmatic.
Justin, that would qualify as a programmatic change. Like if whatever, Washington Street and something
Yeah.
happening, had to go to Duval, that's a programmatic change.
Right.
Because we're leaving Hanson to put kids in Whitman.
You could see a programmatic change of grade 8 coming to the high school at some point. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you
Yeah, right,
could
exactly.
see that as a
Some high school did that.
Yep.
Exactly.
so I'm gonna just put some, and this is gonna be rough language,
Right.
again,
Yep.
this is gonna go to an attorney
Yep,
to like
sure.
massage it, but it's gonna basically say, we need to update the first paragraph to state PK, comma 9 to 12. There should be language that if we move a grade to a different school, it requires a vote of the school committee. And then lastly, if there is a need for an individual student to attend a different school, that shall be based on the authority of the superintendent.
Yeah.
And individual is the key word.
Yeah, individual.
Because you're doing it on, right, like, I think that's where, again, 20 years from now, whoever the superintendent is, if they're like, well, I moved these 10 individuals, it's like, well, wait a second. They all, no, you can't, no, they're not individuals anymore, they're a group.
Correct.
So I think we'd be okay.
The cheer team in Hanson has to get better at the middle school. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Move 10 girls from Whitman.
Yeah, that would be,
10 students.
the superintendent. Okay, good discussion. Section B, the lease of the elementary and middle school, I think this is, I'm gonna just put like C on consensus document, right? Like all this just, I think we've already dealt with this, so, I'm just gonna put a note that said it's replaced with consensus document. I don't think we need to rehash it unless,
Might you suggest that it might be appropriate to have a phrase that references that the individual leases between Whitman and the school district for the middle school property, and I think Hanson's going to be facing the same thing with the development of the fields, that it references the existence of the separate leases, so you don't think you're reading the regional agreement, and then this is it, but that these lease agreements are part of,
I see what you're saying, so clarify,
without trying to incorporate the language of the leases into this document.
we need to know that there are binding lease agreements outside of this document between the towns.
Yes.
That should also be referenced.
Yep.
Okay. No, good call out. So leases, I think we're okay. Termination of leases, it's real straightforward. So moving on to section 4, budget. Budget A, anything on A, B?
I just wanted to flag the third paragraph. Sort of the way that, and I think this is statutory language, but I just want to confirm that somehow. It's the same in, like, the committee can increase the assessment, notify each member town within 7 days. No increase will be effective until the expiration of 45 days, basically to give each town time to call a special town meeting to disapprove it. So it sounds like there's a, and probably exists now, a default. The school committee can vote to increase the assessment to the towns after it's been adopted, notify the towns, and if they don't call a town meeting, it just goes through. And I'm sure Mary Beth and Lisa's heads are spinning, how do we pay for that?
Correct, but I think this was more around, like you said, the statutory requirement around the timing to make sure it's etched in stone here. But following it through, so let's say, 2 months after the town meeting, the school committee decides to vote to increase the budget, and then they give you notice. Like, I think at that point, you'd have to have the town meeting to vote it down, but I just can't imagine how that's gonna go well for the schools.
Right.
The only thing
Like, I just,
I can see here is if we vote the budget, it goes to town meeting, if somebody makes a motion on town meeting floor to vote our budget down, lower than what's been approved,
Yeah.
it gives the school committee an opportunity to try to revoke that.
I said,
or it could go the other way.
It could go the other way.
Theoretically, I thought that's where we were gonna go. Like, you could have somebody at town meeting be like, we're gonna give the schools an extra, whatever, $1 million, and then technically we would now need to vote it, like we don't have that in our budget, so now we would have to vote a budget.
Recess, or I guess an override passes with an unspecified location for money to go.
Right.
Increase the assessment.
So I think this is just clarifying the time. I don't think it's meant to be any type of like underhanded, like, hey, the school, I think it's just clarifying.
I actually think it's
but we can double check.
bylaws.
I thought so too, because it was
In the documents we used to have.
almost word for word in the Dayton agreement, probably the other two.
I can add a note to say,
Yeah,
is this statutory language? If we're gonna have this legally reviewed, now's the time.
I think that is,
7 weeks required. I feel like I've seen this before.
yeah, me too.
And this is where I think you sometimes get tripped up on the whole, like, you could decrease it, but you can't increase it, and like all this other stuff. But I think that's where this language actually clarifies, as long as, so if the school committee decides to vote a budget like February, as long as you're meeting this, you could, and they voted for X, you could make it a lot higher, as long as it's, 45 days prior to town meeting, you could still raise it. So I think
With
that's.
the 7-day notification.
With the 7, right, all that thing.
Yeah,
But we can clarify, is this required statutory language?
yeah, the increase after appropriations kind of jumped out at me.
Okay. Good. Okay, section 5, which is the apportionment of costs. So we have section. So our section 5 would replace this section 5. Everyone's okay with that? Because we have the new section 5, that is kind of word for word, well, not word for word, it's section by section addressing this language. So I think that's what we already covered in the consensus stuff. So I'll make another note. Use consensus document language here.
The only issue I have with this is section 5 has sections A, identifying, B is operating, C is capital, D is debt, and E is transportation.
Correct, which I think purposely omitted for this section and then said we need a new section for
Section
transportation.
6. Yeah, and then what we've been discussing is now section 6 is transportation.
Yeah, so just, so this is just our, not section, this is just going to be number 6. So I think like what I'm kind of envisioning, this will be really up for you folks afterwards, is if we can get through this document, put comments on it, then Jeff or whoever should take this consensus document with our notes and this document that we're creating tonight and send it to an attorney and say, hey, we want you to put this together. And when we do that, that's what we get clarified. But are you thinking that, so you're thinking the new section 5 would work as long as there's still a transportation section somewhere within the regional agreement, or you think it needs to be here?
I think that there has to be a section explicitly saying how the transportation costs are going to.
Agreed.
I don't care if it's under section 5 or if it's under section 6,
Right.
whether you number it or label it.
So I'm going to put, use consensus language here, don't forget to address transportation somewhere.
Which we haven't
I don't
resolved
think we're
yet.
going to see yet.
Correct. But that's in this document. Because you're right, if we take it out of here and then somehow we start focusing on other stuff, months pass. Okay. So section 5 is already dealt with the work that we've all done, so that's good.
Can we just look at the capital costs a little bit?
Capital costs, yep.
Because, I mean, we have a section under debt, which I look at, and that's debt, which are capital, and paying for the school building. And capital costs, this explains the apportionment of capital costs, but I think we can get tripped up on what is capital. So we have a capital committee that sends capital requests to the towns, but that's the apportionment of the capital cost, but it's not necessarily an assessment to the towns unless it's approved at town meeting. Whereas the debt is something that the school committee approves, and it's a different part of the apportionment of what you owe us, of the town's owe us. And I think that's what I got a question from a member about capital costs today, and putting capital on the warrant. I spoke to our attorney, spoke to Mars, and I also spoke to MASC, and only select the select board or the selectmen can put an article on the warrant for capital costs. However, debt, as we put it in and we speak about it at school committee members, or school committee, is a capital cost, correct? So I think there's two different pieces here. We vote capital, and then we send over the operating assessment, the transportation assessment, and the debt/capital assessment, and then we vote on other capital items. So I don't know if that has to be cleaned up or clarified of what is actually a capital item, because we talked about the facilities and the capital costs for emergencies, but if I'm a new school committee member saying, well, didn't I just vote the capital costs? And I think we've actually had that conversation with another school committee member who said, well, when we voted the capital costs, it didn't include the stuff that we sent to the two towns for the buildings. So I'm just not sure if it's this time or if it's just a note on how to clarify that, because it comes up every year, because we use the word capital twice and it means two different things. Part of the assessment piece of this, and then the other, what the town will vote on as an apportionment. The Duval roof needs X, Y, Z, and that's a separate article that the selectmen approve. Whereas these capital costs are just part of the assessment that doesn't have to go on a separate warrant article.
That's correct.
So I'm not sure how to do that, but because I'm in the weeds with it right now, I want to make sure that we can clarify that, if that makes sense. And I don't have the right language, but I think that's something we could either change or modify so that it's clearer.
Call the debt assessment.
And that's in here, right? So
The
like,
debt assessment is here, right?
yeah, so now I want to be careful with
But it specifically talks about the apportionment of the capital costs. And I don't know if it's operational capital or if it's building-specific capital, because it's very clear. It's by enrollment. So if it's the high school capital, it's going to be a 60-40 at bid right now. And if it doesn't really get to the specific town, does it? School year.
Yeah, no, it talks about 4 categories, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, it's the operating assessment, it's the capital, it would be a capital assessment, it would be a debt assessment, and it would be a transportation assessment.
Because right now, I think one of what we potentially could do, and I don't know if it would go over well, is take all of those capital expenses and send it as an assessment. And then this committee could vote all of what we did as suggested warrant article, wrap those all up under this here as capital costs, send it to the town and say, okay, here's our operating assessment, here's our capital assessment, here's our debt assessment, here's our transportation assessment. And it would be in one big package.
The selectmen would have no say as to whether to present
Right,
it
I
town
was gonna
meeting.
say, I don't know how that would go.
May not help.
Well, they still have the say of,
Support.
so yeah, I guess I don't know what happens. I guess this is kind of, but yeah, this is where we get tripped up. So what happens if the school assesses something and the selectmen choose not to put it on the warrant? Like, I guess that's what happens. I don't know.
I don't think we've ever assessed anything they haven't put it on the warrant.
Correct.
But see,
Because is it still binding? Like, at that point, like, it's like, well, we gave you the bill, you didn't say you weren't going to pay
Our
it, so.
understanding was that we had to present, the FinCom has to make votes on the assessment from the school district. The FinCom's recommendation is what's presented at town meeting.
Right.
So, but that would be for the operating and debt assessments.
So let me ask you this, in here, John, the chart of accounts, is that, so if I have a building project or a roof project at Duval, does that fall under the chart of accounts?
Well, everything's in the chart.
So I mean, that's it's very broad based in the 7,000 function. It's under the 7,000 function code. Is that the,
Right, that would be in the general fund, that would be capital projects.
okay,
So it's not part of the budget, unless you make it part of the budget.
Okay.
Like if you were to say,
Bond a couple of capital items and
yes.
issue it as a debt.
see, I also don't want to necessarily see a workaround either. I want it to be transparent and honest. And I think there could be a workaround to say, okay, well, the school committee can't use this as a looking through what the regional school committee can do. We can't put something on the warrant, but it could be voted in as an assessment under capital, and then the towns would be on the hook without FinCom approval. It might be, but it's unilateral total budget package versus a separate line item or a separate vote on different things. And I can look into it more, but it's just something that came up recently, and
Yeah, so the old agreement is clear because it doesn't specify the 4 categories. It just talks about capital costs and operating costs.
Now under here, it dives into, we adjusted that.
Right, this one does.
To number 3, we adjusted it to, we already did some of that language, but again, it's under, apportionment of paying of costs incurred. Now, technically, our capital that I'm looking at to redo things isn't cost incurred yet, because I haven't gotten approval. I wait for that approval before I incur that cost.
Right.
So again, it's legalese language, but it's something that I think we need to clarify.
Well, and I think this also goes back to the spirit of school committee authority, and I think the school committee does have the authority to assess. So I think it's a statutory requirement that the school committee will be allowed, like just the same as it's a statutory authority to assess the operating assessment. And I don't think it specifies like you can only assess for these things. It says the school committee shall have the ability to assess the town. So if we were doing it this way, then the town could theoretically get up to 4 assessments. Operating costs, capital, debt, and potentially transportation, again, depending on what you do with transportation.
So I think that's mucky.
It's just not as clear now because capital isn't defined. So does anyone have a thought on how best to do that?
I just came up with the problem. Because it did come up. I mean, it
no,
came
it's
up with a
fair.
question, because right now, I don't think, Lisa, the capital presentation that we put on is on the warrant for Hanson next week. Right. So that wasn't an assessment by the school committee, although it was voted to be put on the warrant, wasn't supported at Hanson. So now I have capital items that are hanging out there that are being supported in Whitman on the warrant and not in Hanson, because they're a capital cost and they're not expenditures yet. So that's where I'm in the weeds right now. So technically, Whitman can approve all our capital or whatever they put on, and Hanson has 0 capital from the schools on the warrant for Tuesday.
So what you could see next year is updates in Whitman, non-Hanson, high school in the flux. So whatever happens, we should sort of try to figure that out. Because it won't do much for relations. Generally.
I think we actually suggested, Mary Beth, you might remember this at the capital committee, that those capital costs associated with the high school expenditures were subject to Hanson agreeing.
Sure.
We were going to do what we're going to do in the Whitman schools, but anything that requires shared costs at the high school, Whitman would fund subject to Hanson agreeing to fund as well.
Right, so you keep one in abatement, like happened the phone piece a couple of years ago. You keep one in abatement, and then the elementary schools, you now begin a different inequity piece.
We're talking about the touch view screens.
Touch view screens, we're
24.
talking about the access points,
Yep.
we're talking about multiple different things.
Yep.
So what play this out is like, okay, so the internet goes down, enhancing for some reason because the switches didn't work, but it's still allowed in Whitman. And where do we go? We're talking about all students within a Whitman Hanson Regional School District. So mucky is a good term. It's mucky.
Kathleen, that language is actually in the warrant now. So subject to and conditioned upon a vote by the town of Hanson to appropriate the shared costs for the following Hanson Regional School high school regional high school purchases. So we didn't put a timeline on there, so presumably wait till after the fall town meeting for Hanson to generally appropriate capital.
Right.
Yep, and that's what we talked about too, but here lies that gray area in this right here is that, again, we talk 2 different things when we talk capital, because we don't assess it from the committee level.
So for the purposes of town meeting next week, you probably need to get some clarification. I know you're working on clarification from Andy in terms of, is this a binding piece that Hanson actually has to put or consider putting on the warrant, and what happens if they don't, right? Because I guess it's not on there now, right? The capital pieces.
It's not on there now.
So what happens so I guess the question would be, so what happens if they don't? Like, is it still binding, or does that mean they can address it in the October town meeting? We'll kind of have to figure it out. Maybe you can ask the same of Hanson Council.
I'll give Lisa a call, but at this point right now, the guidance that I've gotten is unless the select board puts it on the warrant, it's not a warrant item. unless there's a citizen
Right.
petition.
So then the question becomes, so then what happens if we've done the assessment vote and they don't put it on?
But the assessment didn't include the capital.
Did, I think we
No,
voted.
no, not those pieces.
Not that one.
It's the other capital.
Right, it's the other capital, and that's why.
It's the debt capital.
No, but I think we did. You sure we didn't?
We voted to put them, we voted to send them, but we didn't vote for it as an assessment.
Oh,
We voted to accept what we said.
so we,
Because
okay.
that's why it's.
We're really intricate with the technicalities
Yeah,
here.
it's like-
So we voted, all right, because I was thinking, I'm like, I remember
No,
the sheet
no,
at school
yeah,
committee where we
correct.
voted.
We don't call
So
it
what was
debt.
the vote? The vote was to send,
The vote was to send those specific items as capital items to the capital committees, to the select
Okay.
boards to put on the warrant. And,
so then technically we're probably doing everything kind of sort of properly now, but
what I'm
But
saying.
it
here-
wouldn't stop the school committee to say, we're going to take a vote, not to send, but we're going to take a vote to assess. And then the question would be, well, what happens there?
Correct. Because that could be lumped in, could have lumped in all that capital, what we were looking for, into a 60/40 for the high school,
Right.
each community, and it would be part of that assessment. And then it wouldn't be an outside warrant article on separate items, it would be a lump sum.
Okay.
Then there'd be no say by the towns.
Well, the towns would vote it, yay, or, you
Up
know,
or down.
Right, but it'd be one lump.
one lump.
Right.
It wouldn't be.
Correct.
Well, when you say, what do you mean one lump?
So-
Because it would all be on Article 2?
Correct.
Oh, man.
All capital would be lumped
Yes.
I
together.
didn't think of that.
Not the debt capital with
Not
this
the-
capital. That would have to be broken.
Well, that's what we're saying, is that if the school committee decided to follow this specifically, all capital, including repairs, would be under Article 2. So debt, transportation, and so on and so forth.
Because there's one section of the law that gives the school committee the authority to assess it. There is another section of the law that is very clear that for regional school districts, town meeting can only go like this or like this. They don't get to pick on lines.
Right.
So now, right, that would hold true here.
Correct.
Which is really how we pay for capital improvements at the VOTEC in both towns. Like they don't send us individual articles.
Right.
They build in their assessment.
And I think that's where the conversation is alluded to, because this regional should be treated more like a regional vocation.
Right.
You have 8 towns or whatever, you don't get a separate, this town can't vote it down,
Right.
you know, for the one school.
Right.
So I think it's clarifying again, because that's what I'm trying to avoid is like yay or nay, because your bill's going to be different than your bill,
Right.
because of, if the roof goes at Duval, it's a $500,000 project versus, you know,
And the K-8 student experience is going to be, has a potential
to be different. Yeah.
So for section A,
Yeah, right.
Sorry, but I just.
I want to put, the RAC needs to review section A in detail and determine,
Or if it's just language, if you call it debt, it's debt.
Right.
You know, and then
Call
we
it
can
capital,
keep capital's capital, but it's in that same section. And when we do vote at the school committee, it's operation assessment, it's debt capital, and
Because if we do go back, we've always had a long-standing tradition in both towns that like, we sort of worked with each other and said, hey, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And like, if you look at the phone piece, just in general, there was a $23,700 piece that was left out, that when October came, it was
Yep.
done. You know what I mean? So we've always sort of had words and then sort of talked and then moved on from there. But maybe this is a time to look at it, or this coming town meeting is a little different, that raises these questions.
well, and
by certain
again,
people.
this town meeting is also going to be different because we're still have to abide by the
Right,
9/1
right,
agreement,
correct.
which
No,
is
no,
even murkier than this,
Correct.
right? Because it's not even clear about any of it.
Right.
So if we're abiding by this, then we're probably looking at past practice and
Right.
what we've done, what makes sense. But this is definitely going to open Pandora's box because, you know, I don't, even if we go back to what we had to do for last week's meeting and we look back over the last several years, I can't recall being at a town meeting where there was a recommendation to not support the school budget in town. I don't, I remember in Hanson we got down to like, it was the one out in the field. I remember we were out of budget literally before the meeting started, and the selectmen were able to come together, and it was a balanced budget when it was presented on the field.
Work.
So that's
There were
as close as I remember coming. I
Yeah,
don't,
late 2000s, mid to late 2000s, there were a couple that were solved, probably with you in middle school, that were solved that night.
Yeah, so that's what so I don't recall like a situation where we've made it to, the schools are presenting a budget in article whatever, to whatever, in
Correct.
the respective towns for the budget article, where there's a, we're not gonna support this rationale coming from the select.
Correct.
A lot of that happens before.
Right.
But when we get there, I think we've got,
Yeah, true.
so again, like, I don't know, like, to me, that's where I'm kind of trying to figure out with the capital, if we were actually saying capital costs, is this something that would be sorted out before? Or is it, again, just, because to me, it's all interrelated, like, you
It's all
know, as a school committee
coming from the
member,
same
we can say, oh, we want this to happen, that to happen, but if you're sitting in town meeting and it's a $500,000, $300,000, $2 million deficit, like, what is the plan?
A lot of those, I mean, if I can just speak anecdotally from years past, a lot of those things were like, then even if it was already on the warrant, then there was, we'll pass over because of this and
Right.
that and that and this. So, I mean, there was
There's an
always
ability.
active discussion on what could be afforded and try to all work together.
So A is going to take some work, and maybe you can actually take a look with legal counsel, and then I know we have some other agreements, so that can be looked at. I think B is okay, right? B we can lift, B we addressed within the consensus document
Yes.
in its entirety. C we addressed within the consensus document in its entirety. And then I think we need to stop at D. And then D will depend on the conversation we have on A, right? Are we leaving debt as a separate section? What are we doing? What does that look like? But the rest of this is addressed in the consensus document. And then to Kathleen's point earlier, if we look at section C, making a comment, I'm scroll back down. So D would be debt, so we need to address what we want to do there, and then E is transportation. So again, I think it's refer to consensus document for E. That's probably where it should belong then, to answer our question for a few minutes ago. If we already have transportation here, then it should be here. So I'm going to put a note for E that says refer to consensus document. And then the last one is F, which we talked about this a bunch. I think we're good with this, right?
So yeah,
August, November, February, and May.
the April date was moved to May. It's April, and I do want to admit we were late again this year because of the same works.
I think we're okay with this. There's no other conversations we need to have, like with cash flow or change. Perfect. So then we don't even need to change anything there. So this section is okay as is.
Was that May 1st? I'm trying to remember the dates we were talking about.
The first day of August, November, February, and May.
We were talking
Real
about-
estate due dates.
Yeah, but we were talking a little bit later than that. Which first, I'm trying to remember that.
Oh,
Okay.
it's,
Fancy around the 15th or something.
Yeah, we had talked about the 15th.
Is that easier? I mean, because this is the time to talk about it.
Yeah,
I thought
right,
Frank
I
wrote the
mean-
15th.
Yeah, because he said that the monies come into you on the 1st or something.
they do the 1st of
So it would
August.
be- might be easier.
Sure, we could do the 15th of August, November, February, and May. That's
That work for
even
you?
better, right? Because the due date's are the 1st.
Yeah,
Right.
That would be
Yeah.
ideal.
Turn it around.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We could do that. That's even better.
This is our biggest payment every quarter.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah.
So I'm going to change that word
Thank you.
from the first to the fifth. I can spell the word too. Okay, so we'll make that note there. Okay. Moving on to section 6, which is incurring of debt. Anyone have anything there? Section 7 is amendments. Any? There, hold on, I highlighted the language B, I don't know why. Such amendments will take place on all towns.
Just as a point of order, does limitation A have anything to do with the 3-year piece that we talked about for review?
On the limitation there?
Yeah, on section 7 amendments.
Hey, do you remember?
that could be section 7 could be a place to insert the review requirement.
Ah,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It says may be amended from time to time. And then we talked about setting a time. So I'm just wondering,
that would be a wonderful place to put it, right? Good idea.
not sure, that's what I'm asking.
Love it. You gotta put it somewhere. That would be a good place to put it. Yeah. So add review of agreements. Yeah, because by putting it there, George, then it clearly makes it clear that that was the intent. It's not like these are disconnected sections. Great, good call. Okay, so we can have that section there. Procedure, okay, I know why I highlighted this. So at the last paragraph of procedure, it talks about the defeat of such a proposal shall prevent the resubmission of the same or similar proposal for a period of 1 year. And I didn't understand the purpose of that. So basically, like, we're talking about an amendment. And I was thinking specifically of this amendment, and it gets presented at a town meeting. And it says the defeat of such proposal shall prevent the resubmission of the same or similar proposal for a period of 1 year. And I was trying to think of, like, why would we want to do that? Like in Hanson, if we had a meeting and there was some like technical thing that we needed to fix in May, why wouldn't we want to bring it back in October? Like, why do we want to wait a year? I'm thinking maybe there was something here to prevent like some radical, crazy group from like coming up with amendments every year, but like,
I think the 10%.
this is
that.
right, this is our, well, it still has to come, like, think of the process. It still has to come to a RAC, then it has to go to a school committee, then it has, like, so, I don't know. And then it also, I think, infringes upon the select board authority of, like, it doesn't matter. They're ultimately going to be the group that decides whether or not it's going to go on a town meeting. So, I don't know, that defeat of such proposal sentence, I was thinking should just be deleted unless anyone particular reason otherwise. There's so many safeguards in place to prevent this from just becoming a nuisance that I just don't, I think it almost backfires. So, yeah, we okay with deleting that sentence? All right, this is all going to go.
Word for word, the date with agreement.
Which is, I have a feeling where it came from, like, right? This is one of those, like, oh, it's stock language, we just put it in, we put it in, we put it in. Well, why is it in here? Like, I'm pretty sure if you wanted to start changing the regional agreement, it would take you at least a year and a half anyway. So if it's the only reason I can see this, again, it's the reason I just suggested, like, this goes to a town meeting, somebody comes up with something that we missed, great, let's change it, now we're gonna wait a year? Why? Just do it at the fall, special.
Or we can look to delete.
All right. I'll just put a note. We think we want to delete.
But yeah, if we tried to bring this amended 2018 agreement back a couple of months later, it would have been prohibited by the government language in this agreement.
And we may have wanted to do that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what, we like legal counsel to suggest why this language cannot be removed. And if their answer is, I don't know, everyone has it in their agreement, then that's the answer. Different. Okay. Section 8, which is admission of additional towns. Anyone have anything here?
Can I just, I don't
Yeah.
want to belabor a point.
No, go far
If
away.
we were to go back to the defeat and the resubmission for a period of a year, all I'm thinking about is let's say there's something that comes up that narrowly missed, or somebody was fervent about, or a selectman, or whatever, whoever the powers are. If you put it off for at least a year, wouldn't you then be able to conduct business as usual for a year, and then only have that revisitation, as opposed to, I want a town meeting, I want a special town meeting? It doesn't work there, I want a special town meeting. It doesn't work there, I want a special town meeting. Because I know in some cases, like planning boards and things, sort of say, nah, it's 2 years, not 3 years. So I'm just not sure if there was something out there that may come up, or there's something out there that had come up. That would look.
That's where I'm thinking would be the genesis for something like this. But again, like this, to me, there's so many safeguards that, like, let's just take, for example, like women in Hanson, and town A is adamant about something and town B is dead set against it. So town A decides to keep putting it on their town meeting warrant, and town B says, yeah, screw it, we're not. Right? It's never going to happen. Like town A can pass
But
it.
what would be the effect back to the individual school district, let's say. Like,
We'd
let's
have to,
just-
we'd have to follow the agreement that's in place today,
Right.
just like
But
we
let's
followed
just
through with
throw out
nine.
there, I don't know, deregionalization. And let's say it wanted to go through, it didn't go through.
Yep.
So what's the effect back on the schools if they're providing information continuously for special town meetings that now have to keep taking place because there's no safeguard?
Yeah, I hear you.
I see.
But what was the effect on all the deregionalization talk that never made it to a town meeting?
I can tell you the personal effect.
Correct. So this language has nothing, right, it doesn't say you can't talk about it, it just says you can't vote it. So, like, I think if people really want to do that,
Give me, and
we're
just
gonna
to,
stop. I hear your point, but you see where I'm going, right?
Yeah, I see it.
so if there were a 10% of registered voters in one of the towns petition, that seems to be, certified by the town clerk, and then the selectmen in each member town shall include it in the warrant of the next annual or special town meeting for the purpose of an article stating the proposal. So that might be the sort of.
So is this language tied to that?
Well, so it's all together. There are two methods that an amendment can be proposed, either from the school committee or from 10% of registered voters. But in the 10% of registered voters, I think is what that language is there for, so that there can't be a.
Which I'd be all for.
Oh, okay.
I'd be good with that. But is that clear? Am I missing it, Justin? Is it clear or is it not?
It's not separated, so there's the sort of prohibition on for a year covers everything, but the two methods of proposing this are listed up there, and then it does kind of clarify, if it's 10% of registered voters, the town clerk and a member town shall, according to the recent voting list and signatures, confirm that it's valid.
Yeah, see, to me, I'd be good with that.
So
The
what if
defeat of a citizen's petition.
I got you.
I'd
So
be all
what
for
if
it.
what if we just don't make it 2 paragraphs and make it 1 paragraph? Then you'd only have the citizens piece.
I think you need to split them entirely and say, could be proposed by method A,
Right.
the committee sends it, and all this happens, and method B, 10% of the registered voters in either member town.
Why can't we just put the defeat of a citizen's proposal?
I think it's good.
Right? I'm trying to have a little change, right? So if we say, may be initiated by the vote of committee or by petition signed by 10% of the registered voters. So we said the defeat of a proposal brought forth by 10% of the registered voters shall prevent the resubmission of the same for the year. To me, doesn't that
Shall only be allowed on an annual town meeting.
Yeah.
Cannot be submitted on a special town meeting, or it won't be submitted on an annual town meeting. So here's your week.
Makes sense.
Because I'm thinking of it like in a regular town meeting.
I mean, and then like this crazy part of this is I'm not even sure it's legal because like if ultimately like wait a second, like who decided that, right? Like if you get 10 right, like if I think of Whitman or Hanson, like doesn't it just there are certain things where 10% of the voters decide,
It's like 10 voters.
10 voters decide, right? Yes, there is one of those. Then you have to put it on, right? So
And even last year, we had to amend, we had to seek a second citizen's petition to correct the language and pass over one of the articles.
So what I'm thinking of is like, supporters of Article 3 show up and vote whatever Article 3 is. They love it, everyone loves it, and then, 2 hours later, all those people go home. My supporters have stuck around on Article 428.
no.
And I say, I want to reconsider that. I see it like a reconsideration. You shouldn't allow that reconsideration because the people were there, they voted, and, whatever way it went, that's the way it prevailed. And only if there was some sort of, some sort of,
But do you think the
some
we-
weird thing that happened back then, that you nullify the vote that took place earlier in the night. That's what I'm thinking of here, is you vote, I have my idea is
It gets
it's
defeated.
crazy and, has no practicality whatsoever. I try it and fails, but I get my 150 people together and we have another one next month. And sooner or later, my people keep showing up and the other people don't. And it gets in. I think you should stop that. It should-
And so personally, I agree with that as well. I just don't know if the regional agreement would have the authority to stop that. Because at the end of the day, like what you're talking about is town meeting, which is going to defer to the moderator and, right, like so.
But that's how I see this is like that, where your idea didn't fail.
Correct. Now you're part
You
of
should
that.
at least have to wait until next annual.
And if that's the case, should we just leave it so that a school committee proposal is handled the same way? Just, it seems weird to carve out a different process for citizen petition.
I'm back to just get rid of the sentence entirely, unless someone can give us a good, like, unless legal counsel, right? Because I don't, like, there's such a process involved. Even if there was a citizen's petition to amend the regional agreement, the school committee still has to vote in that process too. So you have literally, like, the school committee is going to have to say, okay, the town meetings are both going to have to say, okay, and then the commissioner's going to have to say, okay. Like, I just think there's enough mechanisms that if, like, it is something crazy, they think someone's going to stop it. It's like, no, we're not voting that. Great, you know, the school committee wants to do this crazy thing, both towns are going to be like, yeah, no, we're not putting it on the warrant. You know, one town, and the school committee want to do something, the other town says, great, we're not going to put it, we're just not going to address it. But to me, I think my concern with this sentence is it does more potential harm than good. I could see us all wanting to move forward with something and then be like, no, we got to wait a year. Why do we have to? We don't want to wait a year. We're all in agreement. Well, sorry, the agreement says we have to wait a year. I don't know. But let's leave it as, let's have legal counsel give us some suggestions as to why, and then you guys can bring it back. Again, all good discussion. So admission, section 8, admission of additional towns, we're okay with. Section 9, withdrawal. Are we okay with this? I know it didn't make it back to our list the first time. Everyone's generally okay with this? I didn't have any. And then, okay, tuition section 10, I just had a question on, which is tuition of students. Is that, what is, you know what, is this referring to student choice or is it something different? The committee may accept for enrollment in districts pupils from towns other than the members' towns on a tuition basis and on such terms as it may determine.
So in the past, not presently, we've accepted special education choice kids, not choice, tuition kids. So if we have a special program that nobody else around has, prior to me being superintendent, the district did accept tuition kids, special ed kids. So it's fine.
Yeah, I didn't have a concern with it, I just wanted to make sure I understood it. I thought maybe it was like a school choice thing. Like
More towns have similar programs, so tuition's not as like it used to be.
Believe it or not. So I will send all of you these comments. I will reattach the consensus document. And then the last item is kind of next steps. Like what does the committee want to do? Is this, are we at a point where we try and get this in an attorney's hands and have them start to cobble it together? Or are there other items? What are folks thinking?
I think I can send this to Mars to look at all the things we put in, and then get that back to council once Mars goes through. Because that's what we were going to use Mars for anyway, was kind of a legal look at first before, because they're cheaper than council making those adjustments. And I'm okay with it where we stand right now.
It's a good process. Send it to Mars, have someone, not lay people like us,
No.
work on the wording and say, yeah, this is good, this needs to be rebuilt, and then get it back.
And since they put together the 18 general, I mean, we can come back, voted from this committee to each individual committees, and then wait for something for town meeting next year, whether it be a special or be a full town meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if this committee can get a draft to school committee, then we can kind of, because it's, who gets it next? It's the school committee.
I would get it to this committee just as well as the updates from Mars.
Once this committee, so
Yes.
once this committee
I
is,
can keep it
has like a
next-
2023 draft,
Send it to
and they
school.
vote, okay, the next step.
Yeah, then to the select boards, and then to town meeting. I think, no, it goes to commissioner first? No, town meeting first.
I mean, commission's the last.
Last bit, correct. because we're looking at next
So
summer.
they do like a preview of it or something like that?
I can send it to them.
They kind of give a quick look,
Yeah.
right? They're not going to make us go through the entire
No.
process and be like, hey,
I would
like
say-
Kathleen, hey,
I
you
would
missed
say-
you missed a typo here, you got to send it back.
Anecdotally, and off the record, they've already said that they would take the pieces that were already clear and add to it and move forward.
Chris?
Yes.
I've been playing over this back to B procedure. We were looking at that last sentence, the selectmen of each member town shall. That word shall, I don't know if that.
Where are you? Sorry, where are you? What page?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 9 of the 2018 agreement. We were talking about the waiting a year to present
Yep,
or
yep.
something. Where it says the selectmen of each member town shall include, I don't know if that's going to try and overthrow the authority of selectmen to, does the selectmen of select board have the authority to place an article in the warrant? That word shall is telling the select, according to this, is saying to the selectmen, you shall place it in the warrant. So shall and may have very different meanings. And interpretation, on the legal side, they're going to look at shall as, you do it, you must do it.
So you're specific,
It's the last, that last sentence, the selectmen, under procedure B, page 9, the selectmen of each member town shall include in the warrant for the next annual or special town meeting call for a purpose in article stating the proposal. So the selectmen basically, they are the authoritative, they have the authority to place this article in the warrant. This right here is saying shall, meaning they're telling them you place it on the warrant.
So maybe we should say the selectmen of each member town shall consider.
Right, may consider.
Shall consider.
Shall
But make- I
consider.
think, right, 'cause
Yeah.
the document, they should
So,
consider.
Yeah, so shall consider. Yeah,
Because
that's
consider
better.
would take away their
It's
authority.
not making them do it, but shall consider, at least makes them consider it.
So instead of including,
Yeah.
shall consider for.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah, yeah, because I think that's what we want to be careful. Like, that was the whole conversation we were having earlier. Like, we can put whatever we want in here, but if it's, if the law says it otherwise, or
Right.
somebody has
Yeah.
authority, it doesn't matter. They're just going to be like, it doesn't
Right.
count. Right, it's not fine. So, yeah, good catch. Okay, so I'm gonna send this to everyone. You're gonna send this to Mars,
Yep.
and then when you're ready, which would probably be after reorganization, I'm assuming.
Because we have to put a person on from Hanson.
Yes, and Jim.
I have to, Lisa has to worry about that. I have to.
We're worrying about it.
Well, so the next RAC, yeah, hang on one quick sec, Chris. The RAC will next convene after elections, so there'll be potentially some changeover.
They probably won't be till June. So the elections are there, we'll rework, and then the school committee has to appoint somebody from Hanson to sit on this board.
Yes, Chris? Yes,
Just want to, the school committee needs to appoint 2 members.
correct.
Yeah, so I don't stay until I have to be reappointed.
Right.
Yeah, good point. Based upon the language that we just went through, I think it does say the chairperson shall appoint subcommittee. So yes, that'll. So there could be a fairly
Thanks,
fairly
Chris.
healthy change
Right.
in the composition of this group. But I think we've got this in a few short months to a point where, I don't know, it seems like there's a draft agreement. So that's great. So I appreciate what happens. Having said that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Chris? All right, all those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Justin? Yes, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.